pleased and excited to welcome LaTrice Byam with us today. LaTrice, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Wayne. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing real well. And a colleague commented, I had my jacket on. I joked and said that it's cold in Florida today, and that's relative. It's cold everywhere. And I know everybody in parts north are experiencing the after effects of the snow.
Yes, we are. We are.
So I know people are filtering in, and we do always like to try to give a few minutes, but I scheduled these for 45. It's right around to kind of the lunch, pre-lunch, post-lunch time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to dive right in, and as I mentioned, LaTrice, we talked yesterday briefly. Many people know Howard. Not all of the people that may be joining us today know you like I do. And so I learned something quite interesting yesterday about your history and tenure, and I'm going to put you on the spot and maybe give you a couple of minutes to talk about your journey into your current role as the Executive Director of Admissions and University Registrar.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Wayne. Thank you for inviting me here today. Good afternoon, everyone. So again, my name is LaTrice Byam. I serve as the Executive Director and University Registrar at Howard University. I've been at Howard, this is my 17th year at the university. And so the journey is interesting because I started out as a temporary employee taking photo ID pictures of incoming freshmen. So it's pretty full circle, I guess, now that I'm responsible for admission of those same individuals. So I started again as a temp in the office of the registrar, was asked to stay on in a permanent capacity, starting as an admin assistant, moved up to course scheduling manager, then to the associate registrar, and then I was asked to serve as the interim director of admission in 2013. And then right after that, I was asked to assume responsibility for both the Office of Admission and the Office of the Registrar. So it's been very fun and fulfilling experience.
Well, and what an interesting journey. I mean, what I learned about that is, you've had your sleeves rolled up doing most of the activities, in and around admissions in the registrar's office. So you really intimately understand all of the facets that are involved in recruiting a class.
Definitely. I'm sure colleagues understand that, yes, when you're in higher ed, you might have one title, but you're doing multiple things. I've been in the different capacities within the office and also even assisting, working closely with admission when I was in the Office of the Registrar. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Everybody has an interesting journey of how they got into kind of the world of higher ed. And I love that. Temporary employee taking student ID pictures to where you are now in a 17-year run. That's amazing and impressive nonetheless. Hey, so, it's interesting. I got a lot of things we want to talk about, but you're in the greater DC area. And, I think it's really relevant to kind of address what I like to call for you all the elephant in the room. What a year. I mean, and outside of this pandemic, right? It's we're in a pandemic, and then, months and months of protests and political unrest, and culminating into 2021, right? With the surreal experience at the Capitol. I'd just love to hear a little bit about the impact on you all as an institution and some of the things that, I've observed President Frederick's leadership, on social media, but just wanted to kind of touch base on that and let you share some of the experience around, the challenging scenario of the last year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been extremely challenging for us and for all the institutions in the DC area. So we have been working from home since March of last year. So we're coming right up on a year since we've been remote. So we haven't been on campus, of course, when all of these things were happening, but definitely still impacted by it. By being there. And so a few weeks ago with the unrest at the Capitol, we were told that we could not go on campus. So although we're working from home, we do have a few individuals who are going in to do some of the operation on a limited basis. but to be told to stay away, we had folks who were on campus, that day who were leaving early. So it's been very interesting, but we have been able to service our students well through it all. And so that's what I'm very proud of.
Well, and one of the things I will ask you here in a few minutes is about, the impact. And gosh, you all had a record breaking year, for
Mhm.
your fall 20 enrollment. I'd like to kind of step back though, before I give you that opportunity to, talk about that and proudly, as you should. You mentioned, the kind of the greater DC area and, the community of schools and all of you, from Howard to Georgetown to GW, and even outside of the Beltway to Hopkins, American Catholic, Gallaudet. There's just such a unique history of high quality institutions. I'm curious about that. How does that impact the way you begin to think about a class and how you shape it?
Absolutely. We have great institutions in the DC area. And many of our students who come visit our campus when they could come in person would also visit Georgetown, GW, American, and the others in the area too. And I think the great thing about that is our students are also able to take advantage of opportunities at those institutions, and we do share resources. We have a program through a consortium of the universities where our students can take courses at the neighboring institutions, and their students can do the same. And so there's a lot of activity and, like I said, sharing amongst those institutions. And so we think about that, and we do let students know when we're recruiting them that if they are considering the other institutions, to say that, if you select Howard, you will still have an opportunity to experience them as well.
Well, and as a national institution, as you and the community of DC schools, most of them are national universities. It's you move away from that somewhat limited area of service, right? Of who your students are and where they come from. What does it mean to you and the admissions team as you think about not being a local or regional institution? You're a national institution and you're attracting prospective students from not only all over the country, but different parts of the globe. What does that mean to the way you all go about, shaping that class?
Mhm. Definitely. And so it's interesting when we look at where our students are you're going and what other institutions they have applied to, we're seeing that it's hard to pinpoint to say, yes, this is our competitor or we have this specific area. No, it's really all over being truly a national university. And so we approach that and keep that in mind with our recruiting. We try to have a very far reach as far as possible as we can. What has come out of this pandemic situation has actually allowed us to have a greater reach with doing virtual information sessions. Our campus tours, well over 50% of the students that we admit typically visit the campus for a campus tour. And so, of course, they're not able to do that right now, and they weren't able to do it for more than half of the year last year. But we've been holding virtual information sessions to reach them. We've engaged over 8,000 guests from April to now. Close to 9 at this point. And we were doing them on a smaller scale before, but just with high school counselors, if they reached out and we weren't able to travel, because our team actually doesn't travel as much. We have, as you know, Wayne, a very broad alumni base. And so made up of great alumni volunteers that assist us with that outreach, and great friends of Howard too that act as recruiters on our behalf. And so that it has really allowed us to just engage with students that would not have had an opportunity, or those that would have come to campus but they can't. And we have our student ambassadors who are actually involved in each one of those sessions. And so it gives the prospective students and their families an opportunity to hear from our student ambassadors who have very different backgrounds. So maybe some of them have studied abroad previous semesters, and others are in our CAR STEM Scholars Program where they're interested in pursuing a PhD in STEM at some point. So they get a pretty good understanding and idea of the Howard experience.
Yeah. Well, and in thinking of this year, and you mentioned, we've been shut down since March. And so much of what many of us have read throughout the year related to the pandemic and higher education has focused on teaching and learning, right? And the pivots to hybrid and fully online. And yet, teaching and learning doesn't really exist if there aren't students coming in. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like, as a team that's tasked with engaging prospective students when everything ceased and stopped and everybody went home, and then you kind of had to figure out what was next. What was that like for you all?
It was very interesting for us. We had to, a lot of decisions had to be made very quickly, but we had to be thoughtful about those decisions. So task force were formed, just like many other institutions, to make those decisions carefully. And we know our prospective student, not prospective, but our admitted students, our freshmen, of course, they want to be on campus. They want that experience. But, we had to make sure the decision made sense and that it was safe. So there were a lot of conversations, a lot of changes that happened. And we ended up having a banner year in terms of enrollment. So our enrollment increased 16% from last year, which is pretty incredible. And we're actually holding most of that enrollment even for the spring semester that we just started about 4 weeks ago. So it was a lot of work, but I'm just very amazed by what we were able to do in such a short period of time. We are very much a traditional university in terms of having courses held on campus, and smaller class sizes of maybe max 35 to 40 students. So it's very different for us and for our faculty, but they were able to pivot and get trained in the learning management tool, and to offer those courses online just to make sure the students were still able to get a high quality level education.
I just, congratulate you all, up 16%. It seems like over the last couple of years, flat has become the new up, right? People were working harder than ever to remain flat or a point or two below where they had been. And to be at 16% up, I tip my hat to everything you all were able to pull off.
Thank you.
So you go from March shutting down to task force, working remotely. Oh my gosh, we're at the end of kind of the cycle. It's time to have those admit days.
Yes.
And, it's when we first became connected, it was not long after you all had a virtual student admission day.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, the number of students you all touched, oh my goodness. And I'll read some of these numbers and then I'll ask you to talk about that day. Over 4,000 users that day, 2,200 of them that were new, over 36,000 page views during that, virtual admit day, of which 22,000 of them were unique page views. Talk to me about what that experience was like leading up to it. All of the new things that were going on, kind of virtual enrollment management and this virtual admit day. And then, oh my gosh, you guys just had an unbelievable turnout.
Yeah, definitely. And so our typical admitted student day is on campus. This is our first virtual accepted student day. And so it's on campus. We have our student volunteers lined up and down Georgia Avenue, welcoming all the guests. We have the band and we have the cheerleaders. And I mean, it's a huge event. And so, once the pandemic hit, we're like, oh my gosh, we know we're not going to be able to make this event in person, so it's going to have to be virtual. So we have to figure something out and find ways to offer it, and to also just still have a similar quality. We didn't want to lose the quality at all. We knew, of course, we're not going to be able to have the same level of engagement with students being available in person and faculty, but we wanted to make sure that they still felt welcomed and be able to make the decision that Howard was the right institution for them. And so we had a kind of morning event where Dr. Frederick was a part of it, President Frederick, a couple of other cabinet members delivered that, and then broke out into smaller events with the schools and colleges, with financial aid, with other offices where they could learn more. And we were able to deliver that through the Element platform, which was very, very helpful. And is, what we needed really at that point, because when we were in the planning stages, we had to then change quickly and say, oh, well, we have to move this. We have to figure out how we're going to execute it.
That's exciting. I got to ask, at the time that was all transpiring, did you know that the platform, the underlying infrastructure was the Element platform?
No. We did not. We did not. So it was great that it was there, but no, we didn't. But as we were working on planning and thinking of, how do we make sure that this event is for our admitted students and their families only, that we don't have, a lot of activity from perspective, because we have a separate event for those students. But this has to be special. It has to be in a place where, yes, they can join, and where they can also get additional information throughout the day if we needed to post updates, or if they needed to pull down documentation to also just receive the, because usually, of course, there's something that we're handing out, letting them know the schedule of the day. So all of that information was put in there. But once we realized the capabilities of the platform, we just say, you know what, this is a great place to put it. And it worked out well. And I don't know, I think were we the only ones to use it that way? I think the first ones to do something like that. At least we were told, I guess, to the extent that we use the system.
Yeah, I think the scale, the sheer volume of numbers, were just overwhelming, and created a lot of excitement for us internally. We were like, oh my gosh, and we've always been pretty confident, in our ability, because we're designed to take virtual enrollment management to scale. I mean, that's the whole goal. But then when you see it come to fruition like that, it's very rewarding on multiple fronts, as you know.
Right, and it absolutely was for us. We were so excited and grateful that we were able to deliver the event through the platform.
Well, and from that point forward, our relationship began to accelerate, right? And we began to have conversations and looking under the hood and looking at possibilities and capabilities. The virtual, admit day, those virtual events are just one subset, right, of the things that we do. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, as we kind of went through that dating process, if you will, and the things that really, as I reflect on that, and I remember some of those conversations and meetings vividly, we really looked a lot at marketing automation and that whole notion of virtual enrollment management. Talk to me a little bit about, the things that you began to see, that created that what if, the possibility moments of being a full-fledged partner with Element.
Absolutely. So, and we've talked about this, just wanting to provide the best experience for our students as possible, the customer, but our students. And we've had experiences with other systems before. We wanted a system that was very user-friendly, something that we can, kind of almost open out the box and begin to use it. And that would get, just right now, a lot of the systems that we have are pretty disconnected. We wanted to be able to connect systems. There's a lot of manual entry, a lot of Excel pivots and things like that. So we wanted to get away from that. And also just even the data management. That was important for us too. And so just through our talks and learning more about the system and what it can do, we felt that Element just best fit our needs and what we were looking for in a system. And just not also like that, just, not thinking of today, but thinking of beyond today. And you want a system that's going to grow with you. And I feel that this is one that will.
Well, and something that you mentioned, prior to, becoming an Element partner, working in multiple different systems, often that didn't speak well with one another, kind of stitching them together to, do the best you can. And, it's been interesting for me personally, right? And we've talked about this. I've worked in higher ed over 20 years, and the last year and a half, specifically in the enrollment management admissions area. And, technology has been available in multiple areas across campus, but you never know to what degree, and then, the efficiency and the things that you really need.
Right.
One of the things that you've mentioned several times, you've talked about student experience and engagement. And if I've learned anything of talking with our, clients, a common theme is a continuous, desire to have more meaningful engagement with these students on the front end. Talk to me a little bit about your goals as a team and as an institution, and then how Element is beginning to help you do that.
Yep, absolutely. So, that's definitely a focus of mine, is to just make sure that we are able to service our students in the best way, that we can have more of those conversations with them, that we're not spending a lot of time trying to pull things together to get communications out, and then everyone has to kind of stop what they're doing to get those out. It takes a long time to set that up. We want to be able to help our students along the process in the best way possible, to give them the information that they need so they can have it at their disposal, and then to ask us any questions in real time. We don't want a situation of, just a mailbox filling up with things. We want to be able to have those targeted communications. And like I said, to also just give them information, to have it in a place where they can retrieve it at any point, and to just speak with us as frequently as they would like to as well. And us being able to we need the time to do so. When you have a lot of the manual entry and the systems that you have to put together, and then the application problems, loading issues, and all of that, it takes away from what it really is about, which is making sure that the students, again, have a great experience through admission.
Well, and I think you can speak to this a little bit as well. We're just as concerned with the user experience of your team members, right?
Yes.
Not just the students that you're actively engaging, recruiting, and moving to application status and beyond, but the ability to have your team members spend more of their time engaging those students. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. That's of great importance for us. We want them to be able to provide kind of a custom experience necessary for students. What I do appreciate about the Element team is that there is a certain level of understanding of what it is that we're trying to do. And from you having experience in higher ed and others on the team, in some cases, and I've had this experience with others where, it just may be a technical person who's kind of walking us through and helping us with the system, versus someone who really understands what this looks like and what the experience is in the admissions office, but also for the student. And so that has been very refreshing and has helped with this process, knowing that there are individuals who really understand what this industry, and also specifically admission, is about.
Well, and that's great to hear, because we measure ourselves on user adoption. We want our platform to be easy to use. And again, admissions teams to spend their time doing what they want to do, is engaging students. Now, one of the things we pride ourselves on, we like to use the term time to value, which really means, how quickly are you able to benefit, from the tools of a platform like this, from, implementation and launch to being completely implemented. And of course, if you've been involved in educational technology, there's always that, gosh, this really sounds good. How long is it going to take, right? Like what's the process? And people, will always tell you, oh, well, it's quick and easy. But the reality is technology implementations, can be complex and require a lot of activity. We like to say that we can have schools up and running with functionality in under a month, and that typically 3 to 6 months is about all you need from start to finish. Right. And we actually had an experience with you all, and I want to say in under a month, you all from our initial launch to you all sending out mass emails of acceptance notifications occurred. Talk to me a little bit about that. Was there some some fear or trepidation involved?
No, we were ready to get that information out through the system. So we were just very excited to hear that, no, we can get you up and running. And yes, of course, there is that like, we've heard that one before, let's just see. So maybe on that side, but once we realized and got in there that, okay, wow, this is pretty simple. We started sending and we've been sending them ever since. And it has been great to just have it set up in the system to send, and it's simple to do it as well. So that helps, it's not, you don't have to, read a textbook or get a certification in a specific system in order to understand how to use it. And so that is what has been really great about it as well, that we're able to just go in there, even the videos are extremely helpful. And then just the intuitiveness of the system, like you can just go around and really figure things out. It was delivered in a great way.
This is the first kind of use case I've seen where we know that in under a month we can be, actually actively helping a school engage, but to see it in action is always very rewarding. So thanks for sharing that. So I want to say I was about 2 months into my role last year, and I was talking to a relatively new client, and similar to you, they up 10% over the previous year. And then he looked at me, he said, Wayne, he said, we worked harder than we have ever worked before. And I will not lie, I'm sure there's a little luck that accompanied us through this. He said, we know we can't sustain that. So we are so excited to now be an Element client, to really be able to have tools and processes in place to have more efficiencies. We know that we may not be 10% up every year, but we're going to be able to spend our time in the right ways. You all up 16%, one of the best years ever in Howard's, enrollment history. And we all know when we're on the hook for numbers, there's that brief period of celebration.
Yep.
And it's what's next.
What's next? Absolutely.
Right? And so now as you look at what's next and you're in the middle of implementing Element, talk about, this next cycle, right? And looking at the fall 2021 class and the impact of still pandemic and remote work, and now a new set of tools coming on board. Yeah. How do you feel as a leader, of that responsibility of the next student recruiting class at Howard and being able to have a tool like Element? Talk to me a little bit about, how you get to sleep at night now as a byproduct of that.
Yeah, so, well, it's interesting because wearing the two hats, I still don't get that much sleep, but for admission, it is getting easier, I will say. But for this class, we're already seeing some really great numbers coming out of it. So like you said, numbers, yes, we do look at them. So as far as our applications, we're up double digits for applications over last year, about close to 20% in the numbers. And so, we've done a lot of great things, which we know to influence those numbers, and just the level of interest in the Howard education, it's in high demand. In Element, we're just excited to complete the full implementation so we can get started with even adding on the application to it, to really start getting those students in from prospect all the way through, inquiry all the way through to enrollee. And so just using the full extent of the system to help us along that journey, because even right now we've made some progress, but there's still a lot to do. I will be extremely happy when we get to the point where everything is really just in this one system, and I have that visibility that's necessary to make those informed decisions to say, okay, well, this is where we're turning, or this is where we need to go, and I can see it in one place without having to pull from several systems or different places. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Excellent. And I'm going to point to Heather real quick. I know that some questions have come in. I've got one more thing I want to talk about, and I do want to leave a little Q&A time and then give people back portions of their lunch hour that have joined us. LaTrice, you and one of your colleagues, O'Dane, both expressed excitement early on about what PACS represented. We're real excited about that. And, we promoted it, and we also recognize that we call it packs, but for admissions folks and professionals, think content packages and pre-built workflows and all of those things that really drive campaigns that are pre-built based on best practices of enrollment management and the ability of schools to quickly make them their own and unique. You were real excited early on about packs. Tell me a little bit about what that means for you all, moving forward.
Yeah, we were extremely excited to see the packs because, we talked and explained that it just takes us a lot of time sometimes to get things done. So anything that can cut down on the time, and that's kind of a shell that we can fill in our information and build, is great. It allows us, again, to get back some other time to assist students in other ways instead of having to start from scratch. If we know it's something that we're going to send on a regular basis, it's there. And especially for us just starting with Element for the platform, and that's very helpful too, because in that way, again, yes, we're not just, okay, now what do we need to put into the system, transferring what we currently have into it. No, it's pretty much there. We can open it up, customize it, and keep moving. So yes, we were very, very excited to see, and we've used, think about a couple of them so far, just configuring and seeing what we can do to go ahead and put them into production.
Well, and again, my excitement around that is that time to value, how quickly a school can begin to leverage an investment, that in recruitment and admissions, and be able to, actively engage, prospective students, sooner rather than later. And we pride ourselves on that. Our founder and CEO, his mantra is not just, better experiences for students and better experiences for clients, but quicker realization of the value and benefit. And we continue to push ourselves internally, to be able to do that. So it's nice to hear that, from your perspective and what that represents.
Absolutely. It shows, we can tell based on what you all are producing. So thank you.
Excellent. Hey, so we're at 34 past the hour. I wanted to pause and open up for some Q&A from people that are out there. Heather, you, Colin, and Rupert, if you want to possibly direct any of the questions that may be coming through our way. Now I feel like I'm the college professor, right? Who's got a question? And then we'll get,
Right.
and then right at the end, it's like, oh, I've got one more.
I do. Right.
I don't see any questions yet, but I highly encourage them, definitely, to take advantage of this time. And all you have to do is just in that chat box at the bottom, you can type your question there too.
We may have covered it all, LaTrice.
Hey. That's great too.
And I will say this, I've enjoyed the opportunity to talk about, your perspective and views on Element and the ways that we've already begun to support you. But what I really have enjoyed is hearing about what you all have been doing there at Howard. We don't pretend to think that we're the panacea for anybody's, challenges. We're a mechanism of support. And again, we work hard to weave ourselves into the fabric of the clients that we support.
All right.
Looks like we have a question.
Yep.
So, LaTrice, what was the hardest part about your transition to Element, and what type of advice would you give to another university that's considering Element 451?
Sure. What's interesting is that I can't say that we've had any hard parts with transitioning to Element. The process has actually been very smooth. The team has been great. The implementation team that we're working with has been awesome in responding to any questions that we have, and also providing information, because that was something that we dealt with before, that we just didn't receive enough information. And then it was, oh, well, you have to do something else, which we've never received before, you know, so it's very transparent and very helpful. So it really hasn't been a hard transition at all for us.
Excellent. And I've got another question here, and this is specific to your enrollment class. And what influence did scholarship funding have on your enrollment this past year?
Absolutely. So we've changed our scholarship program, freshman scholarship program, a few times, I would say, since 2015. We used to offer a strictly merit-based program where students just had to have a minimum GPA, test score, and then they were awarded a tiered structure of tuition and fees, and it went up to tuition fees, room and board, tuition fees, room, board, and books. But so we realized over time our students were getting smarter, who we were receiving applications from and also admitting. And so that just was not sustainable. That program went on for 20 years unchanged. And so then we've been working to change the scholarship funding to include need-based aid and to also consider merit as well. And so in doing so, you know, it's been reduced. So we're actually offering less aid than we did before. And so we're definitely still happy that we're able to secure a class in the size that we want and more last year, with offering, you know, lesser amounts in aid and changing the program. But we are thoughtful with how we're shaping and optimizing financial aid. We do think, as far as the enrollment goes in the numbers, we know it also has something to do with the fact that students are having to borrow as much or come up with as much for housing at this point, because they were able to save that. So we know that allowed more students to enroll, but they're also continuing. So we'll review and see what we're looking like for fall if we have as many students who are able to continue on.
Okay, and so excellent. So I've got a couple of questions here that one it pretty much is directed to me. It asks if there are any community colleges that use the platform, and I would say yes. We just signed our first school of 2021 at the end of actually the last working day of January. Marion Technical Community College in Ohio came on board. We're excited.
Nice.
But I like to kind of back up. I had Jacqueline Thompson on in late November for one of our, I like to call them the fireside chats. And Florida State College Jacksonville is where she is, one of the large urban community colleges in Florida. They signed with us a week after students were sent home and the week that staff was sent home. And we looked at that as a big vote of confidence. But we also brought on Northwest College in Wyoming, a small community college, and then another large community college in North Carolina, Forsyth Technical Community College in Winston-Salem. And we're actively engaged with a lot of community colleges right now. So yes, community colleges are on the platform. Another question, and actually I can probably throw this to you, LaTrice, because you've got an implementation timeline. And I will say they vary depending on the school and the degree of deployment, but they asked about an implementation timeline. What did Keith give you as your implementation timeline, LaTrice?
Sure, like I said, 3 to 6 months. So for us, it's more than 6 months, but we're also doing the integration from Element to Banner. So of course, with that setup, you know, that adds a little bit more, but that's still within that 6-month window, and we're on track. So I don't have any concerns there that we're not going to be able to meet that deadline. But as far as being able to use the system for the communication and events and everything else, you can do that very early on.
Excellent. Hey, and we've got one more here. It says, can you talk more about the advantages to using this system when it comes to using data-driven approaches in recruiting? We're currently using lots of Excels for tracking, and I'm definitely ready for a change.
Yes, yep. And so we were doing the same, using a lot of Excel spreadsheets to put together graphs and reports and to track what is happening with our class. So we're just excited that we're not going to have to do that anymore, that we will be able to pull analytics out of the system in real time and track what's going on with the class and how many students. And like I said, the thing for me is that we will have the information in one place. And so I won't have to go over, pull from our, visit system to see how many seniors and how many juniors and where are they from. All of that information will now be in Elements. So we'll be able to track and see a student's level of interest. And, if they're opening our emails, that has been great for us, just to be able to see the open rates and the click rates and all of that we didn't have before, and to see that the emails were actually being delivered, because unfortunately sometimes, with the decisions, we would hear, I didn't receive it. And when it was unfavorable, it's typically when we get that one. So that has been great for us, just to be able to have so much information, because information is great, but if you don't have a way or a means of actually going through it and analyzing it, so you can then say, oh, this is where we are now, this is what we need to do, or we need to make some changes here, but we're getting a lot of students who are asking this. So yeah, that's been great for us.
Well, LaTrice, we are at the end of our rope, and I got to tell you, if I've enjoyed one thing, more than one, but the big thing I've enjoyed of bringing Howard on board as a client is I've got to become your friend. And I hope that came out in our session today. You were wonderful. Really thank you for joining us and sharing your experience as a longtime member of the Howard team. And we are excited about the year you've had and are honored to be able to help support you and what's next, right? So thanks again. And I guess my only ask is, this has been a lot of fun. Will you come back and do it again in the future?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
I can do it again. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.